Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking an advanced look at the all-new Threezero the Infinity Saga Avengers Age of Ultron Iron Man Mark 43. Now before we get into the video, I first of all want to say a massive thank you to Threezero for sending this figure here my way to review, and of course I shall include links down in the description box below, both to Threezero's own online store as well as the Show's store, where you guys can of course pre-order him, and I do believe he's scheduled to be released later next month. Now this particular figure actually really intrigued me, as I'm used to really picking up the Transformers from Threezero, and for those of you who check out those reviews, you guys know that they are probably some of, if not the best premium collectibles that not only I own in my collection, but are actually currently out there on the market. I think their pieces are fantastic, really well engineered, really well sculpted, and of course impeccably painted. So I was really intrigued as to see what they would do here with the Iron Man armor, and I really cannot wait to show this figure here off to you guys. Now taking a quick look here at the package, you can see we have an awesome piece of artwork there of the Mark 43. We've got the Infinity Saga logo, the same logo that we actually see on some of the Marvel Legends products, and as we spin around here to the side, we've got Iron Man Mark 43, and if you do in fact actually open it here via the Velcro, it does reveal a really nice image there of the figure, and you can see of course we've got this window view display. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at the figure, but before we do that, we've got to take a look at some of his wicked accessories. So as per tradition with Threezero DLX figures, it would seem we of course do get included the display base, a wide variety of different gestured hands, as well as a few additional accessories of course just to spice up your display. Now we'll bring the display base in here for a closer look. I actually think this is a marked improvement when in comparison to their Transformers line, as this is so much more articulated here at the cradle. So we can hinge this section side to side as well as back and forth. We can also manipulate this section here at the top, so this can hinge up and down. We can actually rotate this section around. We can also hinge here at this particular cradle, and this section, which will in fact actually clamp into the back of Iron Man, which I'll demonstrate later on, can also in fact swivel, allowing you to really pull off some of those super dynamic poses. We've got the Infinity Saga actually engraved into the base, which is super cool, as well as Iron Man Mark 45, and then we get a plethora of different interchangeable hands. Now for the most part these are pretty similar. You can see here that we've got these repulsor blast hands. Some are hollowed out in order to accommodate the blast effects, whereas others do in fact actually have them completely filled out. So it really does just depend on what you're going for in regards to a display, but I think the metallic red they've used on these looks fantastic. You can see incredibly vibrant, really reflective, and honestly you'd be very surprised to see that these are in fact made out of a slightly more pliable piece of PVC. You can see we've got a really awesome reflective silver arc reactor in there, and then as we just take a look at some of the others, you can see the same sculpt work, albeit this time in a slightly different position. We do get included two missile pods which can attach onto the forearms, which once again I'll showcase later on in the video. Really nice attention to detail. You can see the red armor plating as well as the silver and the golden missile there, and then we do get 4 different blast effects. Now some are designed to peg into the feet depending on their length, and the others are designed to peg into the hands, so you can just see the differences there. I imagine the smaller ones are designed for the repulsor blasts, and then these ones are probably designed for when he's in flight for the feet. So these are really nice, and definitely you'll probably see at the beginning of this video do create for some fantastic photography options. So with the accessories more or less covered, let's bring Iron Man out and actually take a look at what they've managed to pull together with their first ever Iron Man armor. And so here we have the DLX Iron Man Mark 43, and of course I had to open this segment with him being in one of the most iconic poses of all time, that being the superhero landing pose, and that is definitely something that is really worth noting about this figure. He does have approximately 48 points of articulation with over 222 different individual components, so we're definitely dealing with a superb looking figure, and honestly I think he's probably one of the better Iron Man figures that I own in the collection. Now I personally was really curious to see as to how he would stack up with the likes of the 1/6 scale Hot Toys figure and even the much more affordable Marvel Legends option, and I can definitely say that for the scale and the price point, I think this guy is a must have. Now if we bring him in here for a closer look, you can see here in regards to the sculpt work, it looks exactly how he appeared in the movie. I think they've done an incredible job, not only with the sculpt work but also the attention to detail where the paint apps are concerned. It literally looks as if though this guy stepped off the screen and here into my review station, and you do have to bear in mind that he is significantly smaller than that of a 1/6 scale figure. I'll bring in some comparisons later on in the video, but you can see the reflective metallic red paint they've used for the figure as well as the gold really does create for a very striking visual. There are no paint mishaps on this at all, as you would expect from a higher end figure, but honestly it just looked so well done. You can see here for the actual helmet section, all of the sculpt work is super crisp and precise. As we move our attention here down to the lower section of the armor, you can see you've got the arc reactor there with the actual triangle section sculpted in, and when we do activate the LEDs, as yes this guy also does have an electronic function, you'll definitely see that you can really bring this guy to life. You can see where the arms are concerned, super awesome mechanical detailing. If we just move this out to the side, You can see some superb metallic silver as well as gold and red. Everything about this release looks fantastic. The only area which I'm not a huge fan of are in fact the elbow joints, but honestly that is just a minor critique for what is otherwise a fantastic figure, and I'm sure sure that will be something that pretty much everybody will be able to look past. As we just spin around here to the back, you can see an amazing amount of detail, as well as a super nice coating there with that metallic red paint. As we just take a look here towards the back of the figure, you can see some of the die-cast joints, as yes, this figure does also actually include a die-cast endoskeleton, much like some of those DLX Transformers, so he definitely has quite a considerable amount of weight to him, and once again, it just helps to reinforce some of those joints that perhaps you may be slightly hesitant to actually manipulate. You can see here amazing attention to detail when we actually get to the foot section of the figure. And as we just work our way back up to the thighs, you can see really awesome looking sculpt work. And I may have failed to mention in the accessory segment, but fresh out the package, he also does come with a pair of fist hands, which once again is super awesome. Now, getting down to this guy's articulation, honestly, is pretty astonishing, especially for his scale. So here for the head, he can look up to, I would say, about that far, which is really helpful for some of those flight poses. He can look down to a terrific degree. We can, of course, get the head tilting left to right, as well as looking left to right. Sadly, it can't rotate the full 360 due to the nature of the design. When you do begin to manipulate the arms, it is recommended that you hinge the shoulder pad out to the side and then take this chest piece and push this down slightly, just so that you don't bump or actually scratch any of the paint, which is really nice. So for this, we do get a hinge joint at the shoulder, which can bend slightly past 90, although if we use the armpit joint, we do in fact get a much better range of motion there. We also do get a butterfly joint, which can hinge forwards and backwards, which is excellent. A full rotation here at the actual shoulder, a rotation here at the bicep, double joint at the elbow, which can bend way past 90, full wrist rotation on ball joints, which is super awesome to see. And then as we actually turn our attention here to the ab crunch, honestly, their Soundwave and Optimus Prime were mesmerizing, and the Iron Man is pretty darn astonishing as well. So in order to actually utilize this, you simply just crunch him forwards, and it is 4 different segments, I believe, and you can see that when you crunch that, each segment does in fact cover the joint, so you have no ugly joints visible, which is super awesome. And you can see how this entire almost spinal detailing, I guess you could say, is completely decked out in metallic silver, metallic red, as well as metallic gold, and that looks really cool, and that does actually offer for quite a good ab crunch. He can also crunch back slightly, not to the best, but definitely not to the worst. We can get him crunching left to right, which is very stiff here, at least on my copy. This section here can also rotate left to right, although we do actually get rotation here at the waist, which can rotate slightly, not the full 360 as you'd probably chip the suit, but there, that is definitely a more than adequate range of motion. And then as we turn our attention down to the lower section of the figure, we can take these thigh plates, just pull these forwards, which will then allow you to kick the legs, I would say, roughly to 90 that far. We can then, of course, kick back to that far before the back plate does slightly restrict that. He can, in fact, actually do the splits, and don't worry if any of the armor pops off, it can be easily reattached. We also do get a rotation here at the thigh, double joint here at the knee, which can bend to a terrific degree. And then as we actually take a look here towards the foot, these panels here can hinge up, and the same can be said here for the back, in order to really get a great range here out of that ball joint. So this can pivot forwards and backwards, rock side to side, and we also do, in fact, actually get a hinge joint here at the toe, and you can see how this panel is also on its own hinge joint, meaning that it will flex out of the way depending on how you wish to articulate that. Now, one thing worth noting is I'm not entirely sure as to whether or not it's down to this being an early sample, but the ball joints in the ankles are very loose, at least here on my copy, meaning that he does have a tendency to topple over. Of course, I can get him balanced, but that is definitely something that I hope to see rectified when this guy does go into mass production. So overall, in regards to paint, detail, sculpt work, as well as articulation, much like all of their products, this guy is once again another home run from Threezero, and it really is a super awesome Iron Man. But it does not end there. We do in fact actually get LEDs in this guy, so he does require in total 4 LG1 batteries. They're really small, so I would definitely recommend purchasing these in order to prepare for this guy's arrival. The 2 do store in the head and then 2 do store in the chest, so I'll very quickly demonstrate how to activate the ones in the head. You do sadly have to slide the helmet off. Now, I really wish that you could have just pushed the faceplate and that would have activated the function, especially when we begin to discuss the arc reactor, but you just want to push this button here and it will illuminate the eyes really vibrantly. You can see that the review station isn't actually blasting these out, which I was very surprised to see, so that really does go to show how bright these actually are. And the LG1 batteries do just store here in this top cavity, so you do just slide this here back on, and then you have to slide it off in order to actually turn the batteries off, which is slightly unfortunate. It would have been awesome if you could have just pushed the faceplate. But then as we turn here to the arc reactor, it's very simple. You simply just push this circular section, and you can see how you have here both the eyes and the reactor illuminating, looking absolutely fantastic. fantastic. Now, I'll try my best to show you guys. It may actually be way too bright, but you can actually see the detailing a lot better once that LED is on of the actual arc reactor, which is super cool. And then of course you just push this off here in order to disable it, and in order to actually access the battery compartment you do have to detach the ab crunch, which is intentional as this guy will have to detach from his lower section in order to combine with the upcoming Hulkbuster. But the batteries are stored within this particular cavity, so you just unscrew that and then of course insert two AG1 batteries in there. So overall, in regards to this feature, for the most part I think it works, but I once again would have loved to have seen an actual button at the front section of the head, or even here at the back, as there are some indents where you could have just pushed it on and off instead of having to actually slide this part of the helmet in order to turn that off and on, and then of course slide it back on. It's not the end of the world, but it is definitely slightly inconvenient. And just one thing to mention before I actually forget is if we spin around here to the back, you can in fact actually open the back flaps of Iron Man up, which is a really nice attention to detail. So we can just lift these up and you can see that when actually doing so, it does reveal some awesome internal mechanical detail, all of which has been sculpted really nicely, as well as once again picked out in that super vibrant silver. And just to take a look here at how that appears from a front profile, really awesome, and once again really does help to get him in some of those more dynamic poses that we see in the movie, in particular some of those flight poses. So very quickly going through some of the accessory integration, we'll begin firstly by taking a look here at the forearm missiles. So in order to actually attach these, you just want to take this panel and wriggle it off, and you can see it will detach very easily, and then we can just take either of these and of course insert this into the designated slots and pegs, and there you've got the Mark 43 with one of the missiles like we saw in the movie, which is super cool. And of course you could actually attach the other one here onto this side. If we want to bring in some alternate hands, I will bring in a pair that do have the hollowed out arc reactor. So these are on ball joints, they pop off very easy, which is awesome to see, and then of course are really easy to reattach, so you can see how that looks. Then we can bring in some of these smaller repulsor blasts and just swivel this here into the hollow cavity, just like so, just so you can see how that looks pretty cool. And then we can bring in some of the larger effects, and these do just peg here onto the bottom. And one thing worth noting is you can see this too has also been completely sculpted as well as painted, which is super cool. So we just slide them in there, and there you've got the figure with some of the repulsor blasts. And then finally showing you how he integrates here with the display base, you're going to want to come here to the back, pull this butt flap off, which will reveal a square peg, and then this tab section will just lock itself in there. And of course you can manipulate this to your own personal desire, and you can see that despite the figure being rather heavy, that cradle is having no issue at all in actually holding the weight of him. And if the screws do become loose, then you can just spin around here to the side, and you can see we've got the screws there, so they'll be very easy to actually tighten up. So overall, definitely a really cool figure. Here for a super quick Iron Man size comparison, we've got the Threezero DLX version in the middle, with the Marvel Legends Mark 85 on the right, and of course the Avengers Endgame Mark 85 there on the left. And you can see that whilst he is significantly smaller than the actual Hot Toys version, I think that in regards to materials used, he's pretty up to par, especially considering his scale. This guy's got die cast, much like the Hot Toys version, and the quality of plastic as well as the paintwork, in my opinion, is just as good. And you can see that when in comparison to the Marvel Legends figure, whilst he is a little bigger, I would say that he's probably more in the 7-inch scale. I do not think that he would look that out of place actually displayed alongside some of those Hasbro figures, but in regards to quality between those two, there's no denying that Threezero absolutely abolishes the version from Hasbro, but of course it's going to, as it is essentially triple the price. And so wrapping up this review for the Threezero DLX Avengers Age of Ultron Iron Man Mark 43, overall I think it's a fantastic figure. The paint and sculpt work is once again, as you would expect from Threezero, really well done. This guy looks more or less identical to his on-screen movie appearance, and honestly I was quite curious to see how this guy would actually turn out, as their Transformers, whilst are in a lot bigger scale, even the DLX figures are so well done. So I was wondering as to whether or not they would be able to achieve the same amount of detail as well as articulation with a slightly smaller figure, and yes, they absolutely can. The articulation alone is one of the best. It is almost up to par with the 1/6 scale Hot Toys figure, and considering this guy is more along the lines of, I would say, perhaps the 1/12 scale, that really is fantastic. He has a die-cast endoskeleton, which not only adds a great sense of weight to the figure, but also really helps to reinforce some of those joints that perhaps you would be a little more hesitant to actually manipulate. I think all of the plastic too is really well done. The LED function is a super nice touch, especially where the arc reactor is concerned. I definitely would have loved to have seen a slightly more user-friendly button there for the head sculpt, but honestly, that's just a minor critique, and I think this guy comes with a pretty decent range of accessories. So overall, for those of you who are interested in Threezero DLX products, you've picked up some of their Transformers and you're looking to actually dip your toes in their Marvel line, then this guy is definitely one that I would recommend taking a look at, as he's super cool, and he's only priced at roughly $90, which for the figure you're actually getting, I believe is more than justified. You've got die cast, super quality paint, super awesome sculpt work, a great array of accessories, as well as some of the best articulation ever seen on an Iron Man figure. So with all that being said, I once again want to say a massive thank you to Threezero for sending this sample here my way to review, and of course there will be links provided in the description box below where you guys can pre-order your own now and expect to see him shipping later this month, early next month. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do let me know down in the comment section below. Also be sure to let me know what you think of the figure and will you be adding it to your collection, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.